I think trying to orient yourself to this is your kid and how can you meet them where they are, instead of trying to make them, be the square in the circle hole, is often helpful. And I think that just comes back to getting to know them. I feel like oftentimes some of the families that I've worked with, I've had to ask the parents, we might need to recalibrate. I think you are wanting your kid to be, on a roll, varsity sports, and she wants to be in the theater and she wants to be a school teacher or whatever. So trying to reorient to who is your kid, and do you really know them, and ask them their interest. That can be a really helpful way to open dialogue too.
Welcome to the Mad Rush podcast. I'm Trisha Addix, the original sorority rush consultant. While the stories I have to share are nothing short of astonishing, this podcast goes beyond the wild client tales and sorority life. I'll be engaging with fascinating guests from both within and outside the Greek world, uncovering the surprising connections that bind us all together. Join me for a journey that's as entertaining as it is enlightening. Welcome to Mad Rush. Welcome to the next episode of Mad Rush. Before we get into it, I just want to give a little life update to you guys listening out there. It's been kind of a crazy week. So have you heard the song I Am Not Okay by Jelly Roll? I just discovered it and it's so powerful and it resonates with me right now. So my father-in-law was a great man, and I see so much of him in my husband and sons who are also great men. He died a little over 20 years ago and left a huge hole in our lives, which was partially filled by his brother, Frank. Uncle Frank to us, or Pops to his grandkids and grandnephews. You may have seen this on my Instagram, but last Wednesday, Frank unexpectedly passed away, leaving us with so many memories and a deep sadness for many reasons, including the fact that we won't get to harass him when Georgia beats Tennessee this fall. The same day we learned of Uncle Frank's passing, we got a call from our vet. And if you're looking for a phenomenal vet in Atlanta, look no further than Wyuka Animal Clinic. But they called us to tell us that our 3-year-old dog Skipper has cancer. When this episode drops on Wednesday, we'll be at the oncologist learning more about this, and I'm really trying hard not to go into the what ifs. On the flip side, the response to the podcast over the past 2 weeks has been so wonderful, and I'm overwhelmed by how it's resonating with people in many unexpected ways. It reminds me you can't have the dark without the light. Stay tuned for this episode, which is appropriately about mental health. Take care of yourselves. Today I have with me Olivia Baggett, and Olivia, we have so many connections. First off, she is dating someone that played football with my boys at Marist, and I believe the position her boyfriend played was for my older son. He cleared the way for my son to run through.
Probably. He's yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what he did. And so they were pretty tight. And then I met her mother when I started working with the Atlanta Ronald McDonald House, and she's very active, and we both are really passionate about that charity. And so I've gotten to know Carmen, her mom, and her stepdad through that, and I'm a huge fan of them. So Olivia is joining me. This podcast is about Rush, but it's also about the lessons I've learned as a Rush consultant, client stories, and I'm seeing some trends that I want to address on this podcast. And one of them is the anxiety and depression and feelings of low worth that I see in my clients. So Olivia, welcome. And why don't you tell me why you are way more qualified than I to speak on these things.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me too. I'm super excited to get to be here. And this is it was when you reached out to me, I was like, this is perfect. Cause I love to talk about sororities and all of that. Cause I feel passionate about that. But I'm also a licensed clinical social worker therapist in Atlanta. So I work in private practice with adolescents and adults working through a variety of mental health concerns. So primarily anxiety and depression. But I have worked before opening my private practice in a treatment setting. So I saw some more acute things too. But I like to say that I specialize in anxiety, depression, and perfectionism, which I think you probably see a lot of in the girls that you consult with.
Yes.
So I'm excited to get to collaborate and hopefully talk about trends, but also give some context for parents, families, and students beginning college and different things they can do to work through anxiety and depression while they're on campus.
That's amazing. I'm so impressed by you, and I know that you've helped so many people, and I hope you're good, or I know you're going to help more people through this. But before we get into that pretty serious topic, we have got to talk about. So she said she's passionate about sororities. So
Yeah.
tell your sorority journey, and then I get to tell on you for the picture you sent me the other day.
I saw that because I listened to your first episode about the shirt being inside out, and I was like, oh my God, I have something like that. In my opinion, when it was happening, it felt worse. I was like, oh God. But I was in AOPI at UGA. I graduated from UGA in 2020, like during COVID. So I went through recruitment before COVID, before all the video stuff, in 2016. And it was the best part of my college experience. I was sharing as I was getting prepared for this, like all of my very best friends who I still talk to every day, and they were literally texting me as we were getting on. We were all the executive board at AOPI, and my best friend was the president, and I lived in the house, and my roommate was the treasurer, so she would be up all night, like trying to fudge the numbers and things to figure out how we could get more parties. And yes, she was. And I was like, Lauren, I need this. I need this. I was the philanthropy chair at UGA, which was a super rewarding
What was
role.
it? What is AOPI's philanthropy?
Juvenile Arthritis Foundation. So I got to put on a 5K Run for the Roses, which was super fun. I don't know if they still do that anymore, but I got to do the 5K, and then we had some kind of like AOPI burgers and fries situation, which was fun too. But I thought that was like the best job because I got to kind of marry the helping others and, be in the fancy chapter meetings with the executive board. So I got all the drama and gossip, and that was really good too. But I really enjoyed my time in AOPI at UGA, and I did have I had like a great rush experience, which I know is kind of rare. So I think anytime that I can share, my experience and what helped me, that's an awesome opportunity. So I'm excited to get to talk about it.
Absolutely. And I know where you get your philanthropic heart. Like I said, your mom is, I think her mom may be on every board of every philanthropy in Atlanta. If she's not, she was at one point. So
she keeps signing up. So she loves it. She definitely has instilled that in all of us too.
Yeah, that's great. But I have to tell on her. So I don't know if people out there listen to the episode with Mary Harris, who, by the way, if you need another job, you could be a mentor of all the things you did.
I was actually thinking about that. I was like, do you think Trisha's hiring? I asked my mom that this week. I was like, maybe I could do this.
Always need good people. But so Mary Harris was talking about how when she went through Rush and the importance of laughing at yourself, when she went through Rush, she wore a dress inside out and backwards and didn't notice till the end of the day. And she was super confused why no one told her, but she decided to embrace it instead of freak out, which is very Mary Harris-esque. And it sounds like it's kind of Olivia-esque also, because Olivia texted me a picture after she heard that episode. And in the picture, she has a fan stuck in her hair.
Yeah.
And this is during Rush. So there's little fans that some people say you should put in your rush bag. She was fanning herself because she was hot, obviously, because she was rushing in the South, and it got stuck in her hair. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you had to do a whole rush party with the fan stuck in your hair?
Yes. So they I mean, you know this, but you'll be standing outside the house and they're like 1 minute, 2 minutes, and you're trying to put on your lip gloss before they start like cow hurdling you in. And I'm like trying to like, cool down with the mini fan that someone told me to bring. And all of a sudden it's like my hair, I have this like blowout. I woke up at like 3 a.m. to do that. And all of a sudden the mini fan's like stuck in my hair and my curls. And I'm like trying to pull it out and I'm freaking out. And they're like, you're going to have to go. You're just going to have to go. And so I'm like, do I hold it or do I let it dangle? Like, what do I do with it? And so I do remember, I don't remember which house it was. I know it wasn't AOPI, but I went in and just, I was like, this is super embarrassing. And I'm not going to ask. I remember being like, I don't need scissors because I did not want to cut my hair. But I was like, but no. I'm going to have to pull. I'm just going to have to keep pulling on this. So yes, you have to laugh at yourself.
You have to laugh at yourself. But that also goes against, kind of has to go against our rule, quit the fidgets, meaning you're not supposed to mess with your hair. But I feel like that was an exception to that rule because I feel like you had to do it. And so you're not seeing video today. You will when we drop our YouTube channel. But Olivia has very beautiful curly hair. I can only imagine what that looked like with a fan dangling from it. And I can imagine because I saw it. So anyway, laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
While still doing everything you can within your power to prepare yourself. So like I said, this is so much more than Rush to me. It is the topic of mental health is very near and dear to myself. I struggled with anxiety my whole life. In 1998, when my son was born, my dad was a pediatrician. And when my son was born, we named him Michael after my dad. And my dad saw Michael one time and then went on vacation with my mom and he drowned in the Atlantic Ocean outside of the Outer Banks. So that trauma really ramped up my anxiety. I was a first-time parent. I was expecting my dad was going to, because he was a pediatrician, he was going to be my personal physician on call and so much more, obviously. But that went away when Michael was 3 months old and rocked my world. So, a first-time parent and any parent, which we'll talk about later, the anxiety is really heightened when you have this life that is so precious and you want to take care of it and make sure it's healthy and happy. And anyway, so ramped up exponentially, and it was something that I got medicated for, and that didn't necessarily work. So I'm a work in progress like everybody is. So what I want to talk about today is twofold. The first thing I want to talk about is, as a parent, this is a time when you're not physically when your child goes to college, you're not physically with them anymore. So you don't know what is going on. And unless they communicate it with you, which that doesn't happen a lot, I know, then you're in the dark. And it's very scary as a parent. And so how do parents recognize the signs that their child is struggling, and the tools to help them fix that if they recognize it? Because I know that it's terrifying to not be able to lay eyes on your child every day like you have for the past 18 years.
Yeah. So I think that, if we can dial it back a little, I always tell like families, fortunately in my time as a therapist, I've gotten to do a lot of like parent coaching and family therapy as well with the teens, and like the foundation I feel like is the most important thing. So really the work starts now. So I know there's the fear of, okay, when they drop them off and I can't physically see them anymore, how am I going to know that they're okay? And I believe and tell families like the work starts now while they're still at home. So work on having those, ground level, like foundational conversations. Hey, Olivia, you can always come to me with anything, and mean that, and have that kind of open dialogue. I want to know if there's something that is going on with you I want to be able to help you and make sure you have what you need, like having those conversations more openly before they go, because the beginning of college is just so overwhelming for so many reasons. And then you tack on, like, for many Southern schools, you're doing recruitment, you're walking right into recruitment, you're super busy, a lot of new experiences. And, the last thing you want to do is be calling mom all the time. So I think having those conversations ahead of time, so you're already laying the groundwork for, hey, you can always call me. I can help you with whatever you need. Like there's no topic off limits. Helps a lot because it helps the
Love
teen
that.
be able to be open with you. Another thing that I was thinking as I was kind of preparing another groundwork thing would be I think we often forget, like especially as, I'll speak from my experience, like as the kid, that our parents are people too, and they also went to college
Oh,
and
I
they
love
also
that.
had a hard time or have made mistakes or did the wrong thing or had the guy break up with them or whatever, insert that. And, oftentimes I feel like parents don't have those conversations with their kids. Like, hey, let me tell you about my college experience. And anytime that you're talking about like when I got dropped off and, grandma and grandpa left me and, I couldn't figure out how to turn on the washing machine and dryer, that kind of normalizes for your kid, like, okay, mom and dad also, had a hard time. And if you're open with your son or daughter about your anxiety or, the hard time that you had adjusting, which we all do, again, it's like normalizing, they may be, it promotes them being more open, talking to you about that. So those are kind of like the groundwork things that I think are important before you even get to like, how do I know if my kid is depressed or anxious? I think like having those open dialogues, you'll know if they'll talk to you. So that's number one.
So you're
And
saying you'll know if that's something that they're willing to do, or you're
yeah, so
saying, go ahead.
oh, sorry. So like, if I'm, in contact with my kid a little bit more often, or they feel like they can come to me more often, it's more likely that they will tell me that they're struggling. It's also more likely that I will, as a parent, know if something is off because they're talking. We are communicating more.
Right. That's brilliant. I mean, that's really important and something that, what about parents like pitfalls? Meaning, so yes, that's great groundwork, but do you see people pressuring their kids in a way that is a warning sign for you as a therapist, like, oh, you gotta learn how to do that? Because it's easier said than done. I mean, I feel like being a supportive parent, come to me, talk to me,
Mhm.
is the greatest advice ever. And I'm loving the groundwork part of it. But what I've also seen people who are a little bit harder than that on their kids. And how do you help them understand that that's not the way to go?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm thinking especially about like families that I've had the privilege to work with in Atlanta. They're coming out of some really strong high schools, going to really strong, universities. And I know that they're probably not getting there from just everyone being like, oh, whatever you need, warm fuzzies. Like it's hard work. And I also know that, I don't want to portray that I believe that all kids are like coming to mom and dad with I'm anxious, because that's not
Right.
true. That's also not true. But I do think that, again, another groundwork thing for me would be, explaining to your child if while they were in high school you had that strong like straight A's, got to get into UGA, got to get into Georgia Tech, whatever the belief is, like really, you got to have these friends, you got to act normal, blah 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 blah. Um, Resetting some of that, because I think most of the time for most teenagers, like most people, all we want to do is make mom and dad happy and proud. And so if we feel like we're failing, which many do at the beginning of college, because it's a new place, there's new things, you're in new experiences, like maybe the friends aren't working out, or, maybe if you're me, you're failing chemistry, like things like that.
If you're me, you never took chemistry.
Right. You like to know, okay, like mom and dad are going to accept, whatever is going on. They're going to be helpful instead of like every time I talk to them, they're asking me like, how are your grades? Are you doing this? Are you being social enough? Are you this enough? Are you that enough? Like that, no one wants to talk to someone that is constantly on them like that. So when I say like backing off the pressure, I mean more like I tell people all the time, like come from curiosity, like how's school going? How are your classes going? Have you met new friends? And not in a way of like, well, what'd you say to them? Well, if
Right.
they didn't like you, then blah, blah. Well, what grade did you get on this test? Right. Like coming more with openness often leads to more conversation. So that can be helpful too.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a great point. And what stuck out from a lot of what you said resonated with me, but in particular, when you said have these friends, I see that with a lot of people want their daughters to be in a specific sorority. And as my guest today, Nicole Busby, we dropped that episode today. She's like, once you see your child not happy, then all that stuff goes out the window. And all you want, she was talking specifically about colleges. If you think that they should be at a certain college, but then they're struggling with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, where they're in college doesn't freaking matter. I mean, that's what it is. And so I think that that's great that you try to help parents understand that and understand that that stuff really doesn't matter. And that's a great tool that you're giving them on how to talk to them and show that they are more important than those things, that your child is more important.
Yeah. And I think when you come at it, with more openness, like more curiosity, open-ended questions, like tell me about how the first week of school was. Like, what do you think about your dorm? And not as, well, how's chemistry? Well, how's this? Like what, did this sorority drop you? Do they still like you? Like those feel pressure, like there's a lot of pressure behind that. And I totally agree with you. I think that like when you see your child struggling, it's like, okay, all the things I had in my head, because we all paint these pictures of like, okay, they're going to be here at this school and they're going to be like this and they're going to have these friends and it's going to be this way and they're going to have perfect grades. And I think trying to like orient yourself to like, this is your kid and how can you meet them where they are instead of trying to make them, be the square in the circle hole is often helpful. And I think that just comes back to like getting to know them. I feel like oftentimes some of the families that I've worked with, I've had to ask the parents, like, we might need to recalibrate. Like, I think you are wanting your kid to be, on a roll, varsity sports, and she wants to be in the theater and she wants to be a school teacher or whatever.
Right.
So trying to reorient to like, who is your kid? And do you really know them and ask them their interest? That can be a really helpful way to open dialogue too.
Okay. So I have to stop you and say, I got these official Mad Rush notebooks and I have literally written down almost everything you've said. Because you're very, very wise. And I'm, again, so glad that you're here today because so much of this is so important. And I love that you said, meet them where they are and get to know them for their interests rather than projecting your interests on them. And I'm very, I don't know if lucky is the right thing, but both of my boys are very interested in the same things that my husband is, and then I became interested in it, which is football. And but if they weren't, I would like to think, or I would hope that I would have met them where they were. And if I wouldn't have done that, then I would have liked to hear that from you. So I'm grateful that you said that.
Yeah.
So what if they recognize that their child is struggling, and how can they recognize that? And then how can they help them? Because I know we feel helpless.
Yeah. So I do want to like share some just like signs with people because I know that if you haven't experienced it, you may not be able to like call it out or know it. And I also want to say like, caveat that everyone has a different experience of anxiety and depression. And I mean, I'm telling people nowadays, like we all have anxiety. It's just like how severe,
Right.
and when and where do we have the tools to manage it? So this is not an exhaustive list. But if your kid is one that's talking to you all the time and all of a sudden you're not hearing from them, that might be a sign of like, okay, let me check in. And that could be, and this is tricky because that could be a good thing. Maybe they're out, doing more, having fun, making friends. But, if you're hearing from them less, continuing to kind of push that check in can be helpful. If they are calling you, and I'm sure you've seen this, the spiraling on things, I can't believe that this happened. And da, 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 da. That might be a sign of anxiety. Getting stuck on one thing could be a sign of anxiety. Having a hard time, like this has been a big thing since COVID, is having a hard time like going to class. And that can be hard for parents to track because they're not there. But if you have the ability to kind of like track and check in on that, we are seeing an increase in school refusal, even in college. So that's also a sign that maybe they're anxious to be in class or anxious to ask the professor questions or things like that.
That's great. Those are very good signs. And like you said, not everybody has the same signs. I was thinking about myself when you said that. I was in therapy once and my therapist was like, you seem so together. Like, I was like, you have no idea. Like my brain is on overdrive with stress and worry, but I don't show that. And so I think that those are great signs. So what, if you see those signs, and I'm not saying that it's crisis, but how do you know if it's crisis, A, and B, and this may not be a question you can answer. I don't know. We didn't script this clearly because I'm just jumping in with all my ideas. But
Yeah.
How do you know if what to do, or how do you know if this is crisis or if this is something and what are the tools to do to fix that?
Yeah. Scary topic. I think, as we know, and as we're hearing about these schools and, the more severe cases of mental health and the deaths, unfortunately, in the past few years have increased and things like that. I do want to reiterate that there's almost like no way to be like, okay, they're 100%, going to do this or not going to do this. And I think that parents like feel this, like, I have to know, that they're okay all the time.
Point,
and that is hard to do for anyone, even a therapist, even a doctor, anyone, because we're not there all the time. But those check-ins help. And I also, I always tell parents too, like regulating your own anxiety can help too. So if your child does call you and they're really worked up, something has happened, whether that's, friend drama, or they got their first F on a test, or they didn't get invited to the date party, or, the list is exhaustive. And they're really worked up. The best thing you can do is try to calm yourself down before because I think we get worked up because we're like, oh my God, I just want you to be okay. Like, I just want you to be okay. So what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to do?
Right.
So trying to calm yourself down first when you're having those conversations is helpful. And those are not, those aren't major crises. I think the other things that I would want to bring up today is that the campuses are doing a lot to increase access to mental health care, training the dorm resident assistants to kind of see signs and tales, because that's really who's interacting with them every day. So also trusting the systems that be to do that. And another thing that I often tell families too is if you I know everyone is concerned about their kid, but if you really are like, I just have this gut feeling about that their anxiety is, a little higher or they seem a little sadder, I think it's great for kids to have a therapist. And there's a lot of ways that you can set that up, whether that be, through telehealth. If they're away at college, that's an option. A lot of the schools have, through their program, their medical programs, they will have free or reduced access to counseling through the school. And that's a great place to start too. I think just having another eye or another ear on your kid can be helpful. And I'm always telling families, go ahead and set that up ahead of time. Let's go ahead and get started now. Let's not start when, the rush didn't work
again.
out.
That's
and
great. Yeah.
Right. So, because it's not, going to therapy the first time, you're not going to be like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I told them everything. It takes a little bit of time. So I think building that relationship now. So if you're on the line and you're like, this would make me feel better, I would encourage you to mention that to your kid too. Like, hey, what do you think about being set up with a therapist? And again, normalizing like first semester of college or, college in general is just really freaking hard. So I want to make sure you have somebody else to talk to just in case there are things that you don't want to talk to me about. I also tell parents, like, it doesn't hurt to like look into the school's mental health, like policies and information and resources, and just, your kid might be like, oh, mom, but like, hey, Johnny, I went through and these are some things just in case you need them. I'm not saying that you will, but I would just rather you have them, can be helpful too. So that if there is some increase in symptoms or something like that, we're not starting at zero. Like, who do I call? Where do I start?
Yeah, that's great advice. And, I want to say here, it's okay. I think we need to normalize being vulnerable and transparent is okay. It's everybody has something going on, whether it's acute or not. It's really important to know that being vulnerable and normalizing having a therapist or having a group or whatever it is, it's okay and it's normal. And everybody needs help sometimes. That's one of the things I say all the time. Everybody needs help at different times. And that is great.
Totally agree.
And one thing that another one of our guests, Sabrina, said, everything is just a moment, and that's good or bad. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that mental health is just a moment or mental health struggles are just a moment. But when we're talking about the scary stuff, to me, it's very comforting to know that if it's a bad time, it's going to pass. And if it's a good time, it's going to pass. So don't put too much weight on that specific moment. And that is my armchair therapy. And you should listen to Olivia, not me, because I'm a rush coach.
I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. A rush coach is you could definitely sit in here too. Yeah.
I could, but not qualified. But I do feel like that's a part of it, all. Mm-hmm. So what do you have tools for, or can you tell us any tools that you have for? All right, so we're moving on from parents. I think that she hit on some great points for parents. And I think that as a parent, knowing how to calm yourself before them is a very important point to repeat. But what about if you're the one struggling and or even just going off to college, not struggling, but the transition it's big for regardless of whether or not you have a history of anxiety or depression.
Definitely. And one thing that I forgot to say about parents that I think is helpful too, when you mentioned basically normalizing that other people are in therapy and everyone needs help sometimes, that is a great thing. Like, we learn through example, and our first example is our parents. So if you are willing to say, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to therapy too.
Right.
And it's good as a parent to go to therapy, because when your kid goes off to college, that's also a transition for you. So you're also having a lot of feelings and having a lot of separation anxieties too. So that's a great way to show your kid, like, this is normal, I'm doing it. And that can be helpful too. But as far as like what to do for our young adults, teens, and this works for anyone, these all work for anyone. But I was thinking about our specific group of like freshmen as they're going through, maybe they're going through rush. I think there's like a few things that I was like, okay, these are some good like therapy 101 tools that we may not know unless we've been in therapy before. So one is that like there's a connection between the way that we think, feel, and behave. And the good thing about that is that we can manipulate one of those and the others will kind of follow along. So an example I was thinking about, I'll dial in on like the rush thing. So if I'm going into the house and I'm about to go into a party, and, the fan's in my hair and I'm freaking out and I go in and my thought is, they're going to hate me. They're going to think I'm a freak. I suck. Of course, this happened to me. The feeling that's going to follow that is going to be anxiety, pretty high anxiety, maybe like, feeling low about myself, low confidence, all those things. And the behavior that's going to follow is I'm probably going to be more shy. I'm probably going to shut down a little. I'm not going to be as confident as I usually am. And if we were able to just like, I always tell my clients, like, let's just edit that thought, like the thought that everyone hates me. And let's edit it to something a little bit more, not completely like, oh my gosh, everyone loves me. I'm the most popular girl at UGA. But let's edit it to like, I did have a good conversation at the house I was at before. I had a few good conversations today. And if I think that versus everyone hates me, like what's going to happen after that? So my feelings might be like a little bit lowered anxiety. It's not going to go away, but it'd be a little bit lower. I might feel like, decently confident because I'm coming from a positive mindset of like I had some good conversations. And my behavior is going to be like feeling more confident the next day when I go into the next house or, whatever falling. So at the base of it, I think it's like slowing down and thinking about like, what are we telling ourselves and what are we doing and how is that affecting how we feel? So like same thing with like if we went from like the behavior aspect, like if you were to stay in bed all day and like not leave your dorm room because you're anxious about meeting people, your thoughts are going to be, oh my gosh, no one's going to like me. It's going to be weird, all those things. And you're not going to feel good versus putting yourself out there or behaving differently might result in those feelings changing. So feelings are just a moment and they will pass, but you can manipulate them by changing how you think, changing how you feel. So that's one thing that I think could be helpful for freshmen and like these girls going through Rush is thinking like,
anybody.
Okay, if all my thoughts are negative.
It resonates with me, yeah.
Yeah, anybody. I mean, it's like the whole idea of like, if I think everyone hates me, then I'm not going to walk into the party. Like, why would I go to the party, right? So if we can adjust that a little bit, you're going to have better outcomes. So that is one thing. It takes a little bit of practice. With my clients, I'll typically have them like slow down and even like write down like what's the most common thought that's getting us tripped up or the most common like thing that you're doing that's making you feel this way. And sometimes we don't even slow down enough to realize like, oh, the things that I'm doing are actually making me feel something, like whether it's good or bad.
Right.
So that can be really helpful.
That's
So that's
important.
one strategy.
Yeah, that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
And
another, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, go ahead.
Another strategy that I thought might be helpful, and this one I think can be like kind of funky, but it's one of those ones where you might just have to laugh at yourself. Is creating a like mantra, and I know it sounds like, but it actually does work. So like coming up with a phrase or something that you believe about yourself and saying it over and over and over and over and over again. And I always tell my clients, like, let's not pick the one that's like, I am beautiful, I'm perfect, I'm kind. Like, because if you don't believe that, like, it's not really going to be helpful. Let's like go back to something that we have data on. So I'm a good sister. We know that. You have a text on your phone from your younger sister saying you're a good sister, you're the best sister ever. So we have data on that. So now you can say, I'm about to walk into the house and I'm so anxious and I don't know if they're going to like me. Like, I know I'm a good sister. Like, I know I'm a good daughter.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or like, I'm really good at this thing, whatever it is that makes you feel confident. And saying that and saying it over and over and over again with all of these, like practicing before the moment of stress is helpful. So anything you can do ahead of time. So maybe you're waking up and you're like, I know I'm a good sister. I know I'm a good friend. And I've also I had some girls last year that I encouraged like their families to write them some notes before Rush so they could kind of, those like mantra sticky notes that they could stick up on their dorm wall. That can be helpful too. Because when you're going through that experience and you're feeling so anxious, just to see a note from your mom that's like, I think you are the coolest. I know I'm your mom, but I think you're the coolest, can be really helpful.
Those are great tools and great things to do. And I think that my mom would write me a sticky note like that, but I would be like, oh yeah, whatever. And I'm just kidding. But no, I think that's
straighten your hair.
Exactly. I think that is so important to what you tell yourself. And it doesn't have to be, again, trying to stay away from perfection, but it doesn't have to be that you're beautiful, and all the things that are traditionally what you might think you have to tell yourself. But you can tell yourself, I mean, I challenge anybody not to be able to come up with one or two things that you're good at. And it can be something as evident as I'm a good daughter, I'm a good sister, I'm a good mom, or whatever it is. That's really, really impactful and powerful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I do have one more that I think will be helpful, and I think this goes beyond just recruitment. It could go for any young adult or freshman in college. Is trying to find some type of routine can be really helpful. So I think when we go off to college and we're in a dorm and we're going through rush, it's like everything we ever did before just goes out the window. It's like, okay, I don't eat breakfast anymore. I don't drink water anymore. I don't do this anymore. So trying to find like one or two things that you did at home that help you or make you feel good can also be a way to like decrease homesickness, because you're like, okay, well, I always had a cup of tea at night and that feels like home, or I always played this song when I went to bed, whatever it is. Finding some type of routine, whether that's like getting up and going for a walk. I know that's hard when it's like 2 a.m. at rush, but like other things like that can help with managing anxiety too.
Yeah, something that doesn't take a lot of time. Well, I mean, it can be anything, but especially during rush, that week in particular, I like that idea, but you also have to manage your expectations that you're not going to be able to take your morning run every day because it's rush and you're in parties all day. But I do like a ritual at the end of the day, or maybe a 5-minute moment that reminds you of home, because everybody is homesick. Everybody is overwhelmed. I don't care if you have a good rush or not. This is a big transition.
It is. It's a huge transition. And I think that anything you can do to like bring some normalcy around, to your day is going to help with that, because you're going through so much change, but also just like embracing it and being like, this is just a time that things are changing and things could be changing good. And I'm always like, you're trying new things on, and if it doesn't fit, you don't have to wear it again. Trying new stuff, it can be helpful too, because there might be things you haven't even, maybe you weren't a runner and now you like running. I don't know. So it's exciting.
Who
time.
likes running? Nobody should like running.
I agree.
So Olivia mentioned resources. I think that it deserves repeating. Before you go to college, finding out your resources, getting set up with that. And not everybody has the means to do it, but like you said, there are free programs, there are diminished fees. Looking into that beforehand is great advice. So you're not putting out a fire. You're prepared beforehand. And so there are resources at every school, in every city, every town. In Atlanta, we clearly have Olivia, which is amazing. And are there any more things that you want to address before we tell people how to find you?
Yeah, I think we hit most of it. I think just, knowing your resources ahead of time can be super helpful. Getting connected to a therapist ahead of time can be super helpful. You can find a therapist through your insurance. Sometimes it's tricky and it can take a little bit longer. So I encourage you to go ahead and do that now. And another helpful thing to know is like, just because a therapist says that they're located in Atlanta, they could probably see you in the entire state of Georgia virtually. So also, being open to that too.
Oh yeah, that's great. And that reminds me of something which doesn't have anything to do with therapy, but I just thought of this and I haven't mentioned it on this podcast. So now I am. Before your child goes to college, you need to have legal forms in place so that you can get information from doctors in an emergency. So the one place that you can get is a thing called Mama Bear Legal Forms, and you can go on there and fill out the forms. It gives you so once your child turns 18, if they get hurt at school and they go to the hospital, you can't get any information from the doctors unless you have this form in place. So I believe Clark Howard is, if you're, I don't know, it's clarkhoward.com, maybe Google it. But Clark Howard is a guy here in Atlanta that gives like advice and coupons. I don't know what the heck he does. But I did hear that he also has those forms on his website. But that's a good thing. I'm taking Olivia's advice, putting the groundwork in. And that, again, doesn't have anything to do with mental health, but it does have to do with having access to information once your children are over 18. So glad you said the groundwork, because that reminded me of that. So that's another thing parents can do to lay the groundwork before their kids get to college. And it's going to be too late if you don't have these forms in place. So how can people find you, Olivia? We're not completely done yet, but I just want to, while we're here, while we're taking a break, how can they find you?
Yeah. So my practice is located in Atlanta. So I offer in-person and virtual sessions. So I can see you virtually if you are in the state of Georgia. So you can be away at UGA or, anywhere else in Georgia if you don't want to come into the office. But I do have a physical office in Atlanta. And you can find all my information at oliviabaggettpsychotherapy.com. And I also have an Instagram that's Olivia Baggett. Yes, I know it's tricky. It's Olivia, Olivia, and then last name Baggett, Baggett, psychotherapy. So that's PSYCHOTHERPY. And that's my Instagram handle and website. And I'll try to send that to you, Trish, too, so you can have that.
That's awesome. And it will be on the show notes. And you can also email me at info@madrushpod.com if you want to ask any specific questions that you want, and I can connect you with Olivia. We're here for you. She's really here for you. I'm happy to facilitate that, but she's the expert. She's clearly knows what she's talking about. And I think that using her as a resource or having her as a resource would be beneficial for anybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so Bama Rush Talk popularized the hashtag outfit of the day. For Mad Rush, I'm repurposing hashtag OOTD into observation of the day. Since you're one of my first guests, you're going to be one of the guinea pigs for this. So what is your hashtag observation of the day?
Okay, I have two. Is that allowed?
Well, I guess. Since you're one of the guinea pigs, yes, 2 is allowed.
Great, because I was like, I have a serious one and I have a funny one. So my more serious observation is that we are all thinking about ourselves too much. So we're getting in our own heads. We're like, everyone hates me. Everyone's thinking about me. Everyone thinks my dress isn't right. My hair looks bad. And everyone's thinking that. So everyone's thinking about themselves, and they're probably not actually thinking about you.
Oh, that's a good observation. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we're getting in our own ways. And so if you can remember that when you're feeling like, oh my God, everyone thinks my hair looks bad, like they're probably thinking their hair looks bad, and, move on with your day. So that's my first one. And then my second one is Chet and I were at dinner last weekend, and I was thinking like, every Mexican restaurant should offer free chips and salsa. There should be none that don't.
Wait, you went to one where it wasn't free?
Yeah, you have to order at Taqueria del Sol. You have to order chips and guac or chips and queso. It wasn't just included. And I'm like, I don't like that.
I mean, I get the guac and queso, but don't make me pay for my salsa. That's a bad business model.
It's crushed up tomatoes.
Exactly. Well, that, and I'm going to eat all the cheese dip anyway. So I'm going to pay for the cheese dip. So thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom. I think anybody would benefit from you in particular, and you guys can reach out to her. She said oliviabaggettpsychotherapy.com, and I'm sure she is ready to help.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. Thank you.
Welcome to Time Out with Trisha. Because can you really give advice if you don't speak about yourself in the third person? I don't think so. This is exactly how I speak to my clients. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. Now let's get into it. Everyone needs help sometime. I cannot stress enough the importance of asking for help when you need it. This goes for every aspect of your life, including rush. So the summer before rush or your senior year, once you decide where you're going to college, reach out to the people that are already at the school you've chosen. Tell them you're coming. Tell them you're excited to be there. Ask them what they like about the school and engage them and find out what it is that makes the school special for them. Then you can also let them know you're coming through rush, male or female. If you know a guy that went to your high school and he's there, he may be friends with girls that are in rush. So reach out to him and say, hey, I'm so excited. I'm coming. I can't wait. I'm going through rush. If you know anybody you can give my name to. That way, people know to look out for you. People want to be wanted. They want to feel needed. So they're happy to help. So let them help you. Also, if you're planning a visit for orientation or just a visit to your school for a party or anything in the spring and summer leading up to rush, first off, think of it as being at rush. Behave as you would during rush. Don't go out, get crazy. They're watching you. Also, reach out to people that are there and ask them to meet you for coffee. You want to be on their radar that you're coming, you're interested in them, and you're interested in what they're interested in. And that's it for Time Out with Trisha. We'll see you on another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. For additional Rush tips, updates, and more, please follow me on Instagram at Rush with Confidence. If you would like to reach out to us or for more information, please email info@madrushpod.com. This podcast is produced by Collier Landry and Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Trisha Adams.